Ladies and gentlemen, boys and beasts, welcome back to the channel, and let's talk Call of Duty today as a whole. This is Warzone, it's even DMZ if you want to take it back to there. This is the secrets behind recoil, stability, gun kick, all of that jazz. About 3 weeks, maybe a month ago, I went into bullet velocity, range, and how all of that coalesces into what you should be building your gun's velocity to for your range. This is the second part of that series, and this will break down how to properly build your gun to make sure every bullet hits your target. On that note, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the content here on the channel. I do cover Call of Duty pretty hard, but I do a lot of other things here as well. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so I'm going to use the Ram 7 for this, and I have the Heinrichter scope on it just so I can show a exaggerated version of sway and recoil, etc. I'll take it off later and show you without it. This is just so I can exaggerate it. So the first thing I want to talk about here is aim stability. There's two different parts. There's aim idle sway, and then there's firing aim stability. What these do, first starting with aim idle sway, is what your gun is doing when you are not firing the gun. However, it also affects while you are firing the gun. The best way to do this is show you it in action. So what I've done is I've thrown on 3 attachments that have only aim idle sway on them. The Hunker 5 stock does have a little bit of fire aim stability, but not enough to really make a difference. Let's take this into the firing range and check it out. All right, so I zoom in, you'll see very little sway within the scope as the character breathes. Now, of course, you can hold your breath and it'll center up, but for quick scopes with a bolt action like the Kar 98 or any of the snipers really, you want to have that held for your quick scopes, for your bolt actions like the Kar 98 and all of the snipers, so that when you do aim in for a quick scope, if you have to delay for just a second, you are not going to move off of the target. The other thing that you will use this for is when you are trying to line up a target on a moving target, a lot of times it's easier to just let it go without holding your breath and pot shot it. That's much better than running out of the breath hold while you're trying to hit your shot and absolutely missing. So you could just drag chase to get it. Now, when you shoot the gun this way, I am going to pull in for these. You'll notice the reticle does not jump around a whole lot in the figure 8 pattern of the breath pattern. Now, if I hold my breath while doing it, you'll see what I'm talking about. They're very, very similar. And now for comparison, here is the Ram 9 without any of those attachments and the incredible amount of scope sway that it does have, just for comparison. Trying to hit a target with a bolt action without any aim idle stability is next to impossible, again, unless you hold your breath, but there are situations where you don't want to hold your breath. Alright, so now I have built it out for firing aim stability. It does have a little bit of recoil control in the rear grip, and again, a little bit of aim idle sway in the Hunker 5 stock, but these are not enough to really affect it with this scope on. So to show you the difference here, once again, we're going to zoom all the way in, and you'll see we've still got a ton of sway, almost like we have no attachments here, but we have a boatload of firing aim stability. So again, I'll pull in to shoot the target, and what will happen is it's much more controllable. I actually pulled down a lot more than I needed to. If you're going to be firing, say, a DMR, something like the MCW 6.8 or the Interceptor, the EBR, any of those, firing aim stability is something that is just as viable. Just remember, your first shot is going to be wonky. However, with an assault rifle, stacking a little bit of fire aim stability and aim idle sway side by side is beautiful. That is why the Olay V or the VLK 7 milliwatt laser is still so good, because when you are pulling that trigger, it's not very hard to control, even with almost no recoil control. Alright, so now we threw on a muzzle that gives only recoil control and a foregrip that gives only recoil control. There is no gun kick within these. So when we zoom in, we will have that incredible amount of sway going all over the place. And when we fire the gun, it will be just as bad. However, with all of this recoil control, when we pull the trigger, the gun doesn't really move even that far zoomed in. However, once we bring it back in and we do what we were doing with the others, I can hit my target just fine. It's not a problem because I have all of the recoil control. The problem you're going to run into here is at longer ranges or even on iron sights at this range, as that reticle dances around on the screen, you have a chance to miss bullets pretty regularly. I have the perfect gun to show you this once I'm done going over everything. For gun kick is actually the visual noise on your gun. So let's take the optic off and fire this with the recoil control with no gun kick. So as you can see, I mean, it's Modern Warfare 3, so there's not a ton. But you can see the gun kick, the visual noise on your screen of the gun kicking. So let's throw on a couple of attachments to get gun kick control under our belt. So we'll use the Hunker 5 on top. That gives us gun kick and some stability, so we'll throw it on. And then we will throw on the rear with the center mass grip. Nope, sorry, wrong one. With the Retort 90 grip tape. Now, we did grab some firing aim stability and aim idle sway, but it's just a little bit. We're more focused on what the gun looks like here. And when we pull this trigger, there is way less visual noise on the gun, which allows us to hit our target. So with this in mind, when you build out your guns, there's typically a way that I like to prioritize this. Recoil control is absolutely a must, but it is not number one. Number one is making sure I have enough stability and aim idle sway to make sure that I'm able to hit as many of my bullets as possible while having enough recoil control to control the gun. It's not all about being able to control recoil, because you will still miss shots as your character breathes, because this game cannot decide if it wants to be an arcade shooter or a milsim. So we have things like aim idle sway while we run 30 miles an hour. So to build this gun out, personally with the Ram 9, it's not really something I'm using right now, but for that mid to far build, I would go with the Spirit Fire suppressor, absolutely, all day. I would then throw on the Cormark 40 heavy barrel, because it's going to give us range, velocity, gun kick, and recoil control. We're not losing any aim idle sway or firing aim stability, so it's a go. If you are an absolute G and do not need that recoil control, you can absolutely use the Cronin Headwind long barrel and get more range out of this thing. I'm actually going to leave the Hunker 5 stock on this gun with the 60 round mag, and now we're at 4 attachments. You have 2 options here. Our bullet velocity is pretty good, sitting at 964.3. To me, that's more than enough, and yeah, the irons are good, but I'm going to throw an optic on myself, and here comes a trick. You can get firing aim stability off of the Jack glassless optic. You can get aim stability, which is both firing aim stability and aim idle sway, and that goes for the Intless LSJ3 as well, but you also get aim down sight speed here on a 3x optic. It says 4 times, but with your field of view, it will be a 3 times. So if you want to use one of these, you absolutely can. I, however, go with the KR Mortis Precision 2.5. You can use the Eagle Eye. You can use the AOK 4 times, which is the glintless optic. I love this optic myself. We're going to use the Mortis. So with this build here, we do not have a foregrip on here because we're getting more stability on the back end. So when we go into the firing range and we fire at this far target, other than my bad aim, you'll notice that my reticle does not move on the target. So even when I pull the trigger, it's going to tighten up further and make the shots better, which allows me to absolutely rinse a target. And the Ram 7 has a lot of recoil. And I was saying the Ram 7 has a lot of recoil compared to what it was pre-nerf. Apologies, not the build. The build is absolutely good. Now, I moved over to the SVA, as the SVA is absolutely incredible. And this is the God build right here. But I'm going to take an attachment off, which I probably should have started with the attachment off, but I'll show you why that attachment's there in a minute. Now, the build everyone's been running has been to throw on the high grain rounds with the long barrel, the Spirit Fire, the 60 round mag, and the Eagle Eye, but again, Mortis is better. I will fight you over it. I don't care. So with this build, you're going to have a very interesting situation. So when I'm shooting at this target, watch my accuracy in the top left corner. Okay, it is at 64.71, and there's a reason for that. Let me lay these out on the wall across the room, because it doesn't work on the glass. I did try that, but it's not going to show up there. Hopefully it shows up on the wall here. All right, as you see, there's a whole lot of deviation on where the second bullet in the burst goes. Now, if I had this in full auto and was tap firing, bump firing it to get 2 to 4 bullets per shot, it would be all over the place. Let's go ahead and swap out that high grain. So we take off the high grain and we still have a 940 meter per second bullet velocity, which is perfectly fine for taking fights out to that one-shot Kar 98 range and further. Instead, we're going to throw on a stock. We're going to throw on the smooth fire sniper stock. And the reason we're going to throw this on is, well, it gives us a ton of aim idle sway and firing aim stability. I've been building my guns this way for years now, and it absolutely fries that long range. So what we're doing here is we're giving away movement to get accuracy. And what this does is make sure that when we fire the gun, just watch, you are going to be blown away if you haven't seen this. All right, so we've got our other shots down there. Now watch this. It's straight up. 1, 2, 1, 2. These two are on top of each other. These two are on top of each other. So our bullets are going to stay much closer together. And for that accuracy at range, and again, I turned it back on a full auto, so it was just like before. And I fired a whole burst afterwards. We're at 71%. Again, 76%, I fired an extra burst. So as you can see, it makes the gun much, much better. I've really got to stop recording these videos with a trackpad. I gotta remember to plug a mouse in, but that is okay. So now we've talked about the mid to long range, we should probably talk about the up close. And it's essentially the same formula, but you don't need to worry about as much of the aim firing or aim idle sway. You can choose one, focus on it, and be fine. Because typically when you fire the gun, it's gonna be stable as long as you have some of one of them. So what I've done is I've taken my 2 favorite SMGs from this season and I've built them out the way that I am running them right now. First, I've got the FJX Horus here with what I believe to be the best build for this gun. Now, I will swap off the mini break here for the requieter suppressor if I am running an assault rifle. That is just me personally. You do not have to do this. If you want to, you can also take off the optic and run it stockless. It is a monster and you fly. With this build, our stats are absolutely incredible. Our stability is way up from the foregrip for an SMG. Our recoil is absolutely controlled. We have almost 0 horizontal recoil. We have a 215 millisecond aim down sight with 101 sprint to fire. This thing is flying at 7.1 meters per second tac sprint. It is just incredible at everything. The only thing that is not super good is the ADS movement speed is just under 3 meters when it could be up around 3.5 with stockless. I prefer the optic. That's a choice you can make. But with this build, I'm actually going to take this in here to the firing range, and I'm not even going to control it as I shoot this dummy. I'm just going to push the left click and the right click. Now, for the Horus, that is incredible. Now, I'm going to slightly pull down with my finger while I shoot. And again, I'm on a trackpad, so what does that tell you about the build? This build is absolutely wonderful. And again, here it is on screen if you want your screenshot. And then, of course, I am going to throw the Saperi 46 on screen, and this is a build that I primarily use as sniper support, but it's absolutely usable as an SMG. With the SMG, I would swap out the barrel for the Bore 99 short barrel to get all of the sprint to fire, aim, and movement speeds out of it. And instead of using the DR6 hand stop, I would use the Chook. The Chook is still going to give me a bunch of movement things, but it's also going to give me a little bit of aim idle sway. That's going to help with that little bit of vertical recoil this gun does have. For brevity, this is the build I chose to put in, so let's give it a shot. Let's see how this thing looks. Again, I'm not going to control this recoil at all. I'm just going to let it rip. And well, it doesn't really have any. And again, you can put the requieter on here. You can put the sonic suppressor on if you're using it as sniper support. It's entirely up to you. I just like the way this feels. And that was me pulling down just a little bit. So even at range, on a trackpad, I'm barely trying. Once again, here's the build. Get your screenshot, and let's get some closing thoughts. All right, so I hope that explains everything. Your priorities should absolutely be aim idle sway, recoil control, firing aim stability, and then gun kick. Gun kick absolutely does not matter, especially if you're on controller, because you don't need to be able to see much. You have an optic, you don't need any firing aim stability. You only need that aim idle sway, unless it is on a long range. Now, for long range, I would say it is a tie for second place with firing aim stability and recoil control. You need to make sure you have at least 2 2 notches of firing aim stability on the gun, as that's the only way to register it in the game. There's no like numbers in the graphs. So at least have an attachment that has 2 bumps of the arrows or 2 attachments with 1 bump. Stack as much aim idle sway as you can without hurting your other stats, like I did with that SVA 545, and then lay on the recoil with things like the long barrel, the suppressor, etc. This is how you get a gun that is an absolute laser beam and you can fry targets at long range. This is why people love the Spirit Fire so much. It's why so many people put the long barrel on their guns last year, even though I told you not to, and the guns were better without it. Modern Warfare 2 is an absolutely different beast, but this year the long barrels are king. High grain and low grain are absolutely wonderful, and I will go over why low grain is such an overpowered attachment soon, but I hope this all makes sense to you. Give these builds a try building other guns this way, and tell me what you think. And until next time, boys, leave me alone.